Okay.
Well done. Uh, do I need permission? I share,
No.
but I can't.
Um, Try it
It's not.
and let's see.
Well, I've just said share, and it's
Share settings.
it's not. It's grayed out.
Oh Lord. Um, so,
It's come up now. So share. How's that? Can
go
everyone
for it.
see that?
Yes.
Yes, now I can, yeah.
Excellent. Can you can you still see it?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Hey, well, that's a relief all round. Okay, so I've added some narrative to the slides of what I'm saying in sort of words, so that that helps me, but it also helps you, I hope. Because I think having learning points that you can read as well as hear helps to digest it. And the other bit is a bit like having subtitles. So if you're bad at hearing, like I am, you've kind of got a few words to help what I'm actually saying. Right, okay. How to improve your photography by understanding what makes a good image, what judges look for. I sent you out some little teasers by way of some screenshots, and I think this might have been one of them. Really just saying, and I hope it hits a note, that you all have a competitive streak, and you like to feel sometimes, anyway, getting a high score or the feeling of coming first. So this talk is about to try and realise that potential and bring out that competitive streak. Hey, and to become a winner. Who doesn't want to be a winner? Okay, I've frivolous aside. Trophies and medals don't necessarily make you a better photographer. But the point I'm trying to make here is that the journey to get those trophies and medals by taking pictures, entering into competitions, that definitely does help strengthen your photography and improve your photography. So that's really the message I want to leave you with for that. I also said,
Alan, can I just
yeah,
stop you there? So I know everybody's muted, but if you've got any questions, right, I'm just seeing the any questions or comments at the bottom. But we suggested that if anybody's got any questions, can you try and write them in the chat, and we can read them out and give them to Alan at a convenient point, rather than just keep interrupting him like what I've just done.
if you don't mind doing that, that would be helpful. I think it would help the flow of the talk and mean that we won't be here until midnight. I can't promise, but that I think it will help. So back to this slide, which I did send out as a screenshot, which hopefully you got and you were able to read it. I think I don't want you to debate these, but I really just put them together because I wanted you to think about your photography. So we'll quickly run through and why do I take photographs? Probably not as important as how much of me do I put into my photography. Do I like entering competitions? And if you don't, why don't you? Do you get pleasure from seeing your work printed? And therefore, would you like to enter your work into print competitions? And that brings on a whole host of other things I appreciate. But hopefully, with the help of some of the other members in the club, people that don't print, we can help you with that. Do judges not appreciate my work, or do they dismiss it as record photography? And if they do, is it my fault or theirs? I'm going to cover that in the talk. Do I try different photographic genres? And if not, why not? Do I shoot in RAW or JPEG? And we're going to certainly cover that. And do my pictures get selected to represent the club? And if not, why not? So before we move on, are there any burning questions from that, or shall I move on? Your silence means you're quite comfortable with that. So I'll move on. So types of photography competitions. It's quite important to cover this because the judging process varies according to the type of competition. So generally, Keswick Camera Club, our club competitions are what are called open competitions. So that means basically that you can just produce your best work. You haven't got to worry about any particular rules other than if it's a print, then you put it into a mount and it has to be of a certain size. And the same with digital or PDI. Again, they have to be of a certain size and a color space of sRGB. So things like that, but they're not rules. However, if you then get set subjects or titles, here there are some rules attached to this, and the judge will be expected to interpret how you have actually put that subject together, and that there will be a weighting in additional to the pictorial quality of the image. So if you imagine that snatch a title out of the air, because I think that's coming up, a book or a film title, your interpretation of that and how well you've done that will carry quite a lot of marks in relation to the picture, whereas it wouldn't in an open competition. And the other type of competition is a panel. This is where you have usually about 3 pictures, and they have to work as a whole. They have to be a kind of cohesive body of work. So the judge will be expected to give greater weighting to how those 3 pictures work together more than the pictorial quality. That doesn't mean to say the judge won't be looking for the technical quality, but that applies in all types of competitions. And finally, prints. Prints, judges have another set of rules that they have to apply when they're looking at prints. Typically is the quality, obviously, of the final image. There's also the paper used. Quite often different papers will enhance a picture. The mount, does the mount work with the picture? So all these things come into play when you enter your pictures into a print competition. Just a few more things about the judging process. So in club competitions, as I said, generally speaking, it's just one judge. That in itself is a bit of a sort of problem because you are totally dependent on the subjectivity of that particular judge. So the judge may have likes and dislikes. There's not much you can do about that. So my advice is to really mix up your entry if you can. Don't put, for instance, 3 pictures of a red squirrel in, because then you'll be competing with yourself, because the judge will be trying to choose, if no one else has put red squirrels in, which red squirrel they like. And of course, you'll be competing with the other 2 red squirrel pictures you put in. And the other thing about club competitions is that judges quite often have the images to look at for quite a long time, whereas a lot of competitions where you have 3 judges and the judges just sit and they see the pictures for maybe 10 seconds. In club competitions, we invariably send them off to the judge weeks before, and they can crawl all over them with a magnifying glass. And finally, judges quite often have quite a lot of pictures to go through in club competitions. So they will be sifting through and looking for immediate positive and negative elements in images in that first sift. So my advice is don't make it easy for them. Don't blow out the highlights. Don't give them wonky horizons, and don't give them bits that stick into the picture, which immediately gives them something to talk about. Make it hard for them. The other thing that I think is quite important, and again, I think I might have sent this out in the screenshot, and I remember talking to Val about this at Martha's party. We all have pictures that we absolutely love and our families love, and they don't necessarily win competitions. Now, that will always be the case, and there's nothing wrong with that. The big difference is that a judge won't necessarily like a picture that you like. And that's not necessarily because it's poor judgment. It's just the fact that the judge is dispassionate and has no memories associated with the image and wasn't there when you took the image, which obviously brings back memories. So just try to bear that in mind when you're selecting pictures for competitions that are competing with other people and also have got judges that are independent. So I want to start by looking at RAW. I know quite a lot of you now are shooting in RAW, and it certainly makes a huge difference. You can see here this snow leopard in at the top there. You can see straight out the camera. It lacks contrast and doesn't have much detail in the fur or the eyes. So the picture you can see at the below, it's just had very basic processing. It's been processed fundamentally in Lightroom, and I know Julie covered these basic steps. So the basic key points to check with your RAW file is sharpen, texture, clarity, shadows, highlights, contrast as necessary, color temperature. If the white balance sometimes can be a little bit out, you may need to cool it down or warm it up. Check if it needs any noise reduction. And then if you want to go a little bit further, obviously straighten, make sure the verticals are vertical and the horizontals are horizontal. But if you want to go further, sometimes backgrounds can be blurred, darkened, and made better. Skies can be taken down so they're a bit more dramatic. So all those things can actually be brought in. And then finally, crop the picture to more or less, if you can, put the subject matter on one of the thirds. And if it's a bird or an animal, give them some room to be walking into or looking into. Then finally, put a slight vignette just to keep the corners of the image together. So that's a really quick, easy, I'm saying easy, appreciate it's not easy if you're not conversant with raw processing software. But basically, those are the things you do need to get a grasp of to make the most out of your pictures. I want to give you some illustration with this. So this is a raw color landscape at Buttermere, straight out the camera, and you can see it's a really dull day with really flat light. That's what was in that picture. In that raw file, you had all this data which could be drawn out by those processing tools. So not huge amount of jiggery pokery. It's relatively straightforward, but does require a little bit of time, but not a massive amount. So if you don't want to do this, if you say, no, this is too much for me, then much as I hate to say it, it's probably better to shoot in JPEG, because in JPEG, the camera will do some basic processing for you. It will also discard a lot of data. And if you've got blown out highlights or blocked up shadows, the chances are you won't be able to recover them, but at least it will produce you a picture that is usable into a competition. Whereas with a raw image, you will have to do some work on it before you can really use it in a competition. So tonight we're going to look at quite a lot of different genres of photographs that you will come across, and you may well already do, or you may well want to experiment with. And I'm going to try and show you the qualities that judges will be looking for in these various genres, and they do overlap. So we're going to look at scapes, sport, people, stroke portraits, street architecture, nature, mono, and creative. And it's going to be a bit of a whistle stop, otherwise we could be here obviously for quite a long time. Start with landscapes, and the reason why I'm starting with landscapes is because landscape photography probably is the hardest genre to win competitions with. If you do well with a landscape, feel very proud, because they are quite difficult, and judges have this kind of mentality that you can just walk out where we live in particular and take the most magical photographs of the landscape. And of course, it's not quite as simple as that. You do need some basics. You need a strong composition. You need lead-in lines. You need good foreground detail and a focal point. If you've got sky in it, you need good detail in the sky. You need good light. And ideally, if you have got some atmosphere like mist and snow, That really makes a difference. And the foreground should have more contrast than the mid background. That's how good landscape photographers create that appearance of 3D and recession. As you go through the landscape, the bits at the front are much more contrasty, they're much sharper. And as you go back through that picture, then it becomes less so. And that's how you have this three-dimensional look. And on top of all this, you've also got to make sure that your sky is not burnt out, and you don't have blocked up shadows in rocks and mountains. And also, I have not mentioned it in the notes here, but certainly the other thing to when you've got mountains is it's very easy once you process the image to get those awful halos that Julie talked about, Bob and I talked about when we were doing the critiques. They invariably come out in landscapes which have got mountainous scenes in them. The other thing that you've got to get right, there's no halfway house with this. You've got to get your exposure right. Any image with burnt out highlights or blocked up shadows or both will without any doubt score badly. And the problem is, this is not a fault of the photographer. It's basically not, your camera can't record all the tonal range sometimes that you'll be presented with in a scene. Now, there are tools you can use, and traditionally, landscape photographers would use graduated filters, things like Lee, you may have come across, where you slide them in front of your lens, mounted on a tripod, to darken down the bright areas to balance the light around your picture. Now, they are still around, and a lot of dedicated landscape photographers still use Lee filters for this process. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not trying them. I have a set of Lee filters too. But it is a little bit easier now, so that in post-processing software like Lightroom, you can actually also use graduated filters. You can actually drag down filters that actually will just darken down part of the scene. The problem is, if the picture that you brought into Lightroom is so light, so blown out, it's very difficult without making it look artificial to correct it. So really, it's better to, if you can, to take more than one picture. To basically bracket your shots is the jargon used, so that you can ensure that you're not blowing out your highlights or blocking up shadows. This is a very extreme example of this process. So this is all about histograms. Now, cameras on the back will have a histogram. I've got a croaky throat, so apologies for glugging water. It is only water, it's not gin. Or it might, if it is gin, you'll know by the end of the evening. So when you're actually taking pictures, there is a tendency to look at the picture on the back. Quite often, if it's bright light, it's very hard to see it. The most important thing really, and the best guide I can give you, is to always use your histogram. And if the histogram is too far to the left, this is exactly what you would get, blocked up shadows. If it's too far to the right, you will get blown out highlights, as you can see in these two pictures. And you can see, hopefully, the histogram there where it's actually right across to the right. What you're aiming for is a gap at either side of the histogram. And the way to achieve this when you get very difficult light is to take more than one exposure. And as an easy introduction to this, the best way really is to take a straight shot that the camera is recording for you, and then take an exposure for the bright area, and then take an exposure for the dark area. And then in software, this has been blended in Photomatics Pro, but you do not have to go out and buy software. Nowadays, Lightroom and other software automatically blend together your 3 images or more, but generally 3 is sufficient. and it's called high dynamic range. And the reason why it's called high dynamic range is because the range that you're asking your camera to record is too much for it. So by taking exposures for the highlights and the shadows, and then a straight picture, blending the three together, you will actually get an image like this. And you can see the figure in the walking through this valley, this gully, and you can also see detail in the highlight and the shadows. And that is relatively easy to achieve if you're out and about and that's what you're presented with. Just think about what you've got and how you can deal with it. Landscape is fundamentally about composition, but it's not just about composition. It needs to have good light. So here you've got a really nice sunset, but without that canoeist, it wouldn't really have a focal point. Here you've got really good quality light, but that little boat is absolutely essential to create a composition and give it again a focal point. So you've got this beautiful light coming down, and that final finishing touch is the little yacht, which actually gives you all the other elements and brings it all together. Okay, we've got Bleat Tarn, which I'm sure many of you have visited, looking over the Langdales. And this is quite a strong composition, but the light is really flat. Consequently, it will get a mediocre middling score. But all is not lost if you do a bit of work on it. So here, this is as a result of darkening and lightening, again in Photoshop, Lightroom. It's called dodging and burning, which I'm sure you've come across. But basically, it's about darkening and lightening certain areas. So if I keep going back, you see some of the slightly lighter areas. You can bring those up and make so much more of it. You also need to bring in a bit more contrast, and then finally remove some of the judge bait. So what I've done is I've moved the rock. So if we just go back, you see the rock goes out in the bottom left-hand corner. Judges don't like things going out pictures necessarily. So very, very easy just to tidy that up so it's no longer going out. And also just tidy up some of the other rocks which don't really add anything to the picture. And there you go. You've got a nice lead-in line to the Langdale Pikes, and it's not going to set the world on fire, but it's certainly a damn sight better than that rather flat level picture, whereas now you've got a perfectly acceptable landscape to put into a competition. So simplicity, or less is more, really is the message here. So try to avoid giving the judge too much detail unless it's really an essential part of the composition. So is this a simple image? If you analyze the image, it's actually got quite a lot of complexity in it. First of all, the trees are positioned to lead your eye in without overlapping. That's where the composition comes in. Then you've got this simple background, courtesy of backlit steam. That's where the light comes in. And then finally, you've got the line in the snow, which I've enhanced, darkened it slightly so it stands out, which also aids the composition because that brings your eye in, nice strong diagonal line, and particularly when you come from this part of the Western world where we see everything from left to right. And that is really putting together the composition. Now that picture was a straight picture taken and then obviously subsequently enhanced in post-processing. But here the judge could argue that they've got two images to judge. And a composition like this, as much as you might love the mountain and you love it in juxtaposition to the church, quite often it's just too much. And it's better to give the judge a mountain or the church. And here you can see now, I think this is a much tighter crop, taken the mountain out or taken the bit of mountain that was left out. And I think you've got a much stronger image. And because you've used this strong fence to lead your eye in, so it almost becomes the dominant part of the image, it takes away that criticism of this is just a record shot. You just stood and took a picture of the church. You've actually built a composition into this with a lead-in line, and then the church just becomes the focal point. Atmosphere. Snow makes great atmosphere, and snow with leaden skies is so much better than snow with brilliant chocolate box blue sky. Because why, if you take pictures whilst it's snowing, you get the opportunity to lose quite a lot of the background clutter. And I think it just adds a certain atmosphere that you don't get when the snow stops and the sun comes out. And it looks very beautiful, but I just think it looks too beautiful without any drama. If the sky doesn't work, leave it out. If it doesn't give any more for your picture, you don't need to have the sky. Here, this is all about the 3 dead trees, obviously the background of the beautiful dunes, which I'm sure Paul will recognise. And then you've got this lovely rut in the salt pan. This is death fly. And it bleeds your eye in to that first tree. And that really works. And of course, you've also, because it's taken quite late in the evening, you've got these nice long shadows as well. The sky would add nothing to this image whatsoever. Here you've got a very minimalist picture dominated by the ceiling of this ice cave with these beautiful colours. And then your eye is looking through to the landscape in the background. But I want to suggest that this makes it slightly stronger because you've got a figure which gives it scale. Not only does the figure give you a focal point, but I think it just shows you the sheer size of this ice cave. Interestingly, when Julie and I were here, this is taken in Iceland, and we took this, there were about, I think, 6 or 7 photographers in this ice cave at the time. We weren't on our own. And they were shouting at this poor woman to get out of the way. Now, how easy is it to take out that person in the red coat if you don't want them? But why wouldn't you want them in your picture? I leave that thought with you. Reflected light can sometimes also give you a very satisfactory landscape. Here you haven't got much detail in the sky, which is not as good as I'd like. I think taking pictures before it gets completely dark, where you've got a bit more detail in the sky, is better, but things don't always work out for you. So, you know, we happen to be here in New York at this moment, it's gone dark, but the lights in the water, so this is a 30-second exposure. So you get this nice softness in the water, picking up all the reflections and then using these, the rest of what was the old pontoons to lead your eye into the scene of Manhattan. And of course, as I said earlier, the buckle up in Glenetive works really well at any time because it's a magnificent sight. But add the quality of snow and some moving cloud. So although it's quite a longish exposure, so you can see that the water is slowed down, but also what it has done, and sometimes I think this effect is as good, if not better than the water slowed down, is it's also slowed clouds down. So when the clouds are moving quite fast, it's quite nice sometimes to have these clouds dragged out as they do with an exposure of a few seconds. Seascapes too require obviously focal point and some thought given to composition. Here I've flipped it so that the image is running from left to right, and then I've lightened down that little bit of foam, as you can see, in the surf there, so it actually acts as a leading line to those blocks of ice on the beach. So slowing water down is a personal preference, and not everyone likes it, and I get that. But using a slow shutter speed for water shots can really make your picture come alive. But what you must always remember is you want something solid in that picture that anchors it. You don't want the whole thing blurry, unless you're going for an intentional camera movement shot. But if you want to create a conventional landscape with slow water, you need a rock or a tree or something. The other thing it has a habit of doing, that when you slow water down, there is a risk of burning your highlights. So just keep your eye on that. And as I say, go back to thinking histogram. When you're taking a shot like this, you don't want the water to go too white. If it goes reasonably white and you've got some light areas, you can recover those. But if you've gone too far, sometimes it can be very difficult. And as I said earlier, it can sometimes look like a muddy grey when you try to recover it. I mentioned record shot, and I know record shot has been mentioned by judges in competitions. So I wanted to use this opportunity to show you what a record shot is and how you can take a record shot and make the scene your own, rather than falling foul of a judge saying, well, this is just a record shot, isn't it? So this is, I think, could be described by a judge as a record shot. This is the vessel in New York. So I'm going to take you through a few pictures that lift it from just being a record shot. So this is going inside and pointing your camera up. Immediately, you've chosen an angle and you've used the light that's coming through to make it a little bit different. Here, this is laying down and looking up. So now you've taken another angle. Again, it's somewhat different to a record shot. Or you can just take a section of the building and try and build some symmetry in. Again, it removes it from being described as a record shot. Or you can go one step further if you really feel like playing, and you can actually put some people in. Now, these people were there, they just weren't exactly where I put them. I call this dueling phones, because they both got their phones, and I think they're both looking at their phones or even taking pictures. But it does look like they're taking pictures of one another. And all I've done is I've moved them from different parts of this building into that particular spot. And I've tried it in colour on monitor. I'm not saying it's a great picture, I'm not saying it's a competition winner, but it moves it away from that awful comment by judges saying it's a record shot. Other things that judges will be looking for, which is, I guess it's almost stating the obvious, is sloping horizons. Believe it or not, we still see sloping horizons. I mean, it's the easiest thing in the world to check. So the other thing to try and avoid losing some of your picture, when you take a landscape that's got both a horizontal and vertical in it, as you've got in the basalt rocks here, try to give yourself more than you actually need. So what I'm saying is, don't crop it too tight with your lens on your camera. Take more than you need. When you then finish straightening up your horizon, straightening up your basalt rocks, you will lose quite a bit of your picture. You'll see it when it comes up. But by taking more than you need, when you recrop it, you will still have that really beautiful landscape that you saw in the first place. There's nothing wrong with that. With cameras now, with so many megapixels, it's so much better to just take more than you need. In the old days, when we didn't have zoom lenses, and I'm old enough to remember when we didn't have zoom lenses, the rule of thumb was you take 2 steps back from the picture that you're taking and then press the shutter. So a landscape needs good composition and it needs a good light. but they need to work together. So one without the other doesn't necessarily work. So the picture on the left has got a nice lead-in line, but the light isn't particularly good. It's quite flat. The light is coming up, as you can see in the background, but it's not adding anything to the scene. The one on the right has got quite a pleasing light coming up, but it's almost a straight shot of the mountain scene. What you need is a combination of all those elements. So here you've got a perfect light, storm light coming in, hitting the trees. You've got a lovely lead in with the cabins, and I put the grid, rule of thirds grid on, so that you can see how the front cabin works on the third and then takes your eye through the picture. And these grids can be turned on in cameras. I find a grid like this very useful in composition, but you can also have a grid like this on your phone camera as well. I want to take you through a process for perhaps producing a picture for a competition. So this was taken about 2 months ago by Julie and I in Valencia. So this is the image straight out the camera. It's not a particularly exciting image. As you can see, I only had a 24-105 lens on, so consequently it's not as close as I would like. So there's quite a lot of stuff around it. It was pretty dark at the time. There was obviously some light coming from the buildings, but there wasn't much else. So the ISO is 2500. It's taken at 40th of a second because I didn't have a tripod, and it was taken at f4, which is wide open. So this is the image that you get back, and you look at this on your screen and you go, yeah, really? Probably delete. Or maybe not. So let's just see. So first step, and this is a very brief introduction to a workflow, and this is all in Lightroom at this stage. So basic exposure adjustments, and Julie touched on this. So under presence in Lightroom, I would bring up the clarity and the texture. So here I brought the texture up to 57, clarity up to 27. I brought taken the highlights down. I brought the shadows up to 63, 77 respectively. And also I've denoised it because of the ISO being quite high. I've sharpened it right up to 99, brought the radius back to 0.7, and then you don't need any masking or detail. So that is the first step. And I've applied a crop, taking out, so I can go in a bit closer just to see what I've got to deal with, really. So that's the first stage in the workflow. This is the second one in Photoshop. So what I've done now is I've actually brought it into levels, which can be found in the drop down under image adjustment levels. And I've basically darkened the overall picture. And then I've taken the dodge and burn tools and selectively lightened and darkened. So I've lightened behind the figure so he stands out more. And then with the, I then selectively behind the dodge tool, I darkened the bright areas with the burn tool. So I'm confusing the tools. So basically what you've got is, if I take you back, you can see. So behind the figure, obviously it's not quite as light as you would like. So I've lightened that, but this area further up around the sort of the bigger circle, I've darkened it down to make it a bit more atmospheric, really. And the other tool, which has really made all the difference, is the remove tool, which takes away distractions. The remove tool in Photoshop is really, really useful. And you can see all those bits of rubbish which really are distracting have now all gone. It's almost like a miracle. And all they've done, all the remove tool has done, is use my pixels to replace those elements. So then you've got quite a reasonable picture. So taking into 3, so this is really the draft image in color. Is that really something I want, or should I look at another crop using the grid? So I want to put it on the thirds. So I've cropped it slightly more, so you can see slightly tighter crop. I've also sized it to 1600 by 1200, and I've set the color space to sRGB. So that is now done and ready and could go into a competition. And then I think, well, shall I see what it looks like in mono? Because maybe mono might add something. So in this case, I brought it in, still in Photoshop. I opened up a plug-in filter called Nick Silver Effects, which I predominantly use for creating monos. And this first step is to create a neutral mono at 100% through a layer. And then you overlay that neutral one with a high structure smooth. If you've got Nick, you'll follow this. If you haven't got Nick, you won't, but you get the idea. And then you apply the structure smooth 70% over the top of the neutral mono. And then you have got the mono effect. What the high structure does is bring out a little bit more detail. If you kind of see, makes it a little bit more soot and whitewash effect. So then you have to make a decision. Which one do you think works? Well, personally, I think color beats the mono, but that's just a personal thought. We can have a vote on it when we have a break. Okay, I want to move on to sport. Not really my subject, and we've got Bob in the audience. If anyone's got any really detailed questions on sport, I'm sure he won't mind answering them. But a few things I picked up along the way, primarily from Bob Gibbon. Sport generally works better in mono because it takes away some of the color distractions that you can get, and it kind of gives you a much more, I think, more impact. You want to try and avoid background distractions, but sometimes people, the crowds, can actually add to the storytelling. So it's kind of a balance, but you really want them a bit out of focus so they don't dominate the key player, in this case the guy hopefully going to score a try. Here the spectators in the background add to my mind to the picture. They weren't there. I have put the spectators in this case, obviously very out of focus, but they weren't directly behind these two American footballers. All there was a kind of an openness. And I just felt that it needed that to help the storytelling value. Capturing the moment. Obviously, if you are going to partake in sports photography, you have got to capture that moment. And this is a good example. It's absolutely vital that that's the shot. And it moves on. Bob will tell you that, because he told me that if you see the image in the viewfinder, you've missed it. You've actually got to focus and then start taking the shots on the run up, and just hope that one of those images you've taken on the run up and the jump is the one that actually works. Again, it requires a lot of practice to get it right, but if you do get it right, it can be a very successful in terms of competitions, which is, after all, what we're talking about this evening. This is the long jump. Bright sunshine can help you keep your ISO down, but it does bring with it another element, and that is a jumper coming at you from high up, and you're pointing upwards. So consequently, you've actually got quite a harsh contrasted light, and there is a risk that all of the areas will actually be too dark, including the jumper himself. So you have actually got to be quite careful with your exposure, and more often than not, you'll get more chances to do this. So you check your exposure immediately and you make adjustments to ensure that if everything is too dark, you can add some more exposure to get a better shot. But sometimes it's better the landing with the long jump than it is actually the jump in the air. As you say, you get some really good expressions, and with the sand coming up, that can make quite a useful picture. This probably out of my limited number of sports photographs, this has probably been the most successful sports photograph I've had in competitions. Portraits and people. I have to say, second to my love of nature, I think portraits and people is my second love. If you have a rapport with your subject, you can get some real good images, and it can be quite a fun session as well. I put the rule of thirds on because the rule of thirds applies to portraiture as much as it does to landscapes or indeed any other type of photography. And sometimes you may even be wise to crop down on someone's head. Quite often, I've seen many portraits where the top of the head's been cut off to get that line on the top third to run through the eyes to strengthen the image. In this case, it's not necessary. So really worth thinking about that. The other thing is you need good light in the eyes. You obviously want some catch lights, and the eyes have to be sharp to emphasize your portrait. So a little bit on basic lighting. This is traditional portrait lighting. So you will always have a key light. It doesn't necessarily have to be coming in from the left. It can be coming in from the right. But in this case, the key light is coming in from the left. On the right, there is a fill light or a reflector. And then you will have a hair light, which separates the subject from the background. And that helps to give it that sort of 3D effect. It's sometimes called modeling light. But certainly, this is quite very simple. There's no background been applied. So this is just against an ordinary black background. And you've got a very pleasing portrait. Here you're using just pure window light. So this is very soft window light. Works very well with a female model. And you can also apply some skin softening post-production as well, which also works very well with a female model. Or go outside. You don't have to be in the studio. This was taken again with a model in some very tall grasses, and using a reflector over the sun to actually diffuse the sun so that it's not blasting down and creating really strong shadows, and then using a reflector to fill in some of the other shadows to soften the whole thing up. This was shot wide open at 2.8 to give you quite a small depth of field, and I think that adds to it as well. And then it's had a white layer over it at about 10%, just to give it that sort of dreamlike quality. If you're photographing male models, don't be afraid to really work on some of the tools that give you some quite dramatic effects. This has had detail extract added through Nick software to make the face come out really. Every little defect is brought out on the face and beard, and then the eyes have been lightened up to give it that real drama and impact. Simple props as well in portraiture work very well. So this hat and goggles was purchased from Amazon. I think around his neck is an old scarf, and then it's a leather jacket. It might even be Bob's leather jacket that we put around his shoulders to turn him into a pilot. And again, it's been a very successful image with very simple props. Now looking at photographing people at events. So we come out of the studio now, and we're now just wandering around with our camera to take pictures at the event. This is a Born Survivor event. Funnily enough, I know David Stevenson's watching. I think David Stevenson was stood right next to me when I took this image at the Born Survivor event. And in terms of this type of event, this has probably been my most successful image. It's got quite a lot of things wrong with it. The hands are probably a little bit too bottom, close to the bottom of the frame now. As you can see, the water's just running off him as he's just come out. Nowadays, with content aware, cropping and all these things, I could actually add a lot more to the bottom. This picture is quite old now, but I think it works very well to illustrate these type of events, and you can get quite a dramatic picture, particularly leaving some background in that helps to tell the story, but not in focus, so just enough so you can see what's going on. Edinburgh always used to be a favourite place to go to take candid pictures, some street photography. You get some real characters. Sadly now, you don't get so many of the characters. The rules have been tightened up on what they can and can't do. It's all been kind of sanitized, which is very sad. The thing is with Edinburgh backgrounds also, you have to either ask the person to stand somewhere so that you haven't got a lot of distractions in the background, or you have to work on them in post-production to blur down what you've got. That's a question of just what it is. And as you can see here, the top of the hat has been chopped off to make the eyes more dominant on that top third. This is Beamish Museum. Again, really great place for taking pictures. The people there, they're all volunteers, and they're more than happy to pose. They're always dressed in appropriate clothing. And this guy was an absolute dream to photograph, and so again, it makes a picture that does quite well because it adds to that storytelling as well. The Raggy Victorians are also really good value if you can go to an event where the Raggy Victorians are on. So the Raggy Victorians quite often are hired to turn up at places like Bliss Hill, Beamish, places where they fit into that type of background and those sort of museums. And they are people who are a part of a society, and they all adopt a original Victorian character, and they then dress appropriately as that one character, and they're really well researched and very knowledgeable people, and they are more than happy to talk to you about the character and pose for you, and they make really good pictures. And if you see much in the way of competition pictures, you will see the Raggy Victorians popping up time and time again. And this is at the Irish Folk Museum. We were over there visiting Bob and Annie Gibbon, and we always generally try and make a trip to the Irish Folk Museum. And you can always find some lovely lady, more often than not lady, baking, and you can then sort of partake once it's finished, which is always a bit of a bonus, particularly because we always seem to be over there when it's raining outside. It's quite nice to go in the warm and enjoy some freshly baked bread. I can't remember what it is, potato bread, or I'm sure in the interval, Bob.
Soda bread.
It's soda bread. Thank you. Anyway, a little bit about this picture. So this picture has had some processing. So this is the raw unprocessed file. You can see it's still pretty good. So it just to prove the point, it really is a minimal amount of work to make it into a really pleasing picture. So I brought up the shadows, and I've taken down the brightness on the apron and the bread. I've removed her spectacles hanging around her neck, cropped it a little bit more, and taken that hook out, which was a little bit annoying, as you can see. But apart from that, it's really a very pleasing image and with minimal amount of work. And you haven't gone to a studio, you haven't paid a model. You've got a very, very nice image capturing a moment. Okay, street photography. Before we have a break, street photography. So there's no real rights and wrongs with street photography, other than the fact that you do not want to get punched by someone. So you do have to be a little bit aware. So in a situation like this, you generally want to either shoot from the hip. You definitely want a camera with a silent shutter. You want to have a reasonable depth of field, so about f11, it's quite good. And you want a wide angle lens, which also gives you quite a good depth of field. With those elements, you can just snap away and then crop them to how you actually want them afterwards. Don't worry about composition and all the rest of it when you're taking scenes like this. When you're in a subway with people who could get quite difficult, you do not want to be taking too many risks. So this is a record shot of the painting, but because you've then got this figure who's actually looking, God knows why, so closely at this painting, it adds a personal touch. It became an interesting picture rather than a record shot. This is probably could be considered to be a record shot. And let thy feet, millenniums hence, be set in the midst of knowledge. And what it desperately needs is a person with feet. And suddenly it has some sort of pictorial quality. Here, underpass reflection, really, really good. And it works very well if you happen to have a fellow photographer to act as a model and he's in the audience. And I'm sure he can tell you how wonderful techniques he employs being a model. But when you go out together, I'm sure quite a lot of you will go out, more than one of you. It's really useful to use someone to act as a model, to fill in, particularly when you've got a nice reflection like this. Really strengthens.
He seems very happy.
Yes, he's a miserable sod. Okay, before we break, I just want to cover the first bit of nature, because nature is quite a big section, and so I've kind of split it. And I just want to say a few basic things about nature. Nature photography is, and Julie touched on this, is really about certain factors. I know everyone would say, oh, well, you've got to have stunning images of lions, tigers, birds in flight, whatever. It's really the pictures that are most successful are quite often the most simple ones. They have really good backgrounds. They are taken from a very good angle. The composition is really good. There's nice catch lights in the eye. They're the elements that come into play when you have a successful nature picture. Here you've got two classic pictures of Barnow. Neither of them are particularly good. The one in the top has got a lovely perch and it's got room to look into, but the perch is too big. It doesn't have much in the way of light in its eyes, and the background is very neutral. The bottom one has got a mouse, but the background's really kind of messy with bright spots, and it's sat at the end of a perch with really little light in the eye. So really, whilst you can have all manner of pictures, they don't necessarily work. So I just want to cover a few key points about nature. So the first one is background, and here you've got really nice backgrounds in the case of these two kingfishers. I know they're birds on stick, and I know some judges are funny with birds on sticks, but we'll come and talk about that in a moment. But basically, if you've got a really neutral, sympathetic background with space for the bird to look into, with a catchlight in the eye, it's generally speaking a successful image, certainly in my book. And I think it should be in all cases. The other key point is the angle of view. You do not want to be looking down on the bird. First and foremost, you won't get a decent background. And secondly, there's no intimacy with your subject matter. You're just basically looking down at them. You're diminishing them as something that's small and unnecessary. By laying down and getting a low angle, as in the bottom picture of this killdeer, it just makes the picture have so much more impact, and again also will bring it in to be more successful. And just to illustrate how much impact you get from low images. And finally, if you've got all these things brought together, like good composition, good light, catch lights in the eye, a good, nice, subtle, appropriate background, and then adding to the overall effect of having some action here with the bird, with a mouse, you are guaranteed to have a successful image. Let's take a break. How's that, Jeremy?
Excellent.
I thought you were going to sleep.
No, I was unmuting. We're a little bit beyond time. We're at 20:34. So let's give it till 22. 5 minutes. Just go and top your coffee up, or your gin and tonic if you're.
Okay. Do you want me to unshare or just leave it as I am at the moment?
Doesn't matter. But if anybody's got any questions for Alan, Bob, go for it.
Okay. I'll just go and fill my water up. I'll be back in 2 shakes. I'm ready when everyone else is ready.
Well, I did say give it till 22, but I think, did I say
okay. Well,
but
I'm good.
A lot of people's screens have disappeared, so
yeah, I can't see. I've got nothing to.
So there's only Val, yourself, and me.
Everyone's gone off, have they?
Yeah,
that's okay.
So.
Like MacArthur, I have returned.
So did I get everything right on those sport ones, Bob?
Yep.
Good.
Wouldn't argue. I would have gone in tighter on the hurdlers. That's the only thing. But that's a personal preference.
Yeah, well, that's quite an old picture.
It is, because I think those 2 ladies have retired.
Oh God, that's making me feel old.
You are old.
Shut up, you. No one's talking to you.
Sorry, did that slip out then?
Yes, it slipped out. And you're not getting any younger, Jeremy.
I know. We are of pensionable age.
Well, you're not yet. You've got a few more years to go.
Back in the day when
back in the day you would have been pensionable age.
Yeah. But now I've another couple of years if I make it that far.
Retirement is overrated in terms of not doing anything. You spend more time doing stuff when you retire than you do when you're working.
Yes.
Well, I've had a good half of the year where I've been retired, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, look how busy you were doing all this stuff.
Yeah, I know.
But it's more fun, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. But this week I get a wage for the first time in yonks, so happy
Well,
days.
that can't be bad.
No. But anyway, I'm seeing people returning.
Okay.
Um,
I'll move on to the next slide because we're going to spend a little bit more time on nature.
we're missing Annie, Paul, Richard, Sean, and Tony.
I do have a question, if that's all right.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Alan, when you was talking about landscape and the 3D effect
Yeah.
with sharpening, I always thought that you sort of focus stack to give help because you like to see front to back sharpness.
Yeah. Well, that's a little bit of a myth. Focus stacking works really well with insects and still life, but with landscapes, you don't necessarily want everything front to back sharp. And the reason why I say that is because if you think of what the landscape looks like in the natural world, when you get right back, you get what's called kind of a look of recession, and things get a little bit less sharp, and quite often you get mist in the background. So it's not always sharp front to back. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes.
And what you're trying to do with having things more contrasty at the front and then the midground, and then in the background you're having it slightly less so, is to give it that look of recession and that three-dimensional effect. If you have everything photo stacked and sharp all the way through, it's the 3D effect is less so. But we're only talking about landscapes here. Obviously, photo stacking has certainly a role, and I think it's very important in some areas. But I personally don't like to see landscapes photo stacked front to back sharp. That's just me.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Shall I start, Jeremy, or are we still waiting for a few? Jeremy, are you there?
Yes, sorry, let's go for it. I forgot I'd muted myself. Yes. Let's start because we're
Okay.
on 41.
All right. So just want to say a few words on birds and judges. And I think some judges really have forgotten how difficult it is to get a good wild bird shot. I know I had a bit of an argument with another photography judge when I was judging at Northern Counties, when he was dismissing pictures of kingfishers, saying you can just go to a hide and pay your money and you can get it. And I said, have you ever been? And he said, no, but I know. I said, well, but they're wild birds. They don't, even if you paid your money, and even if someone's put some fish in a spot in a pool, the bird doesn't necessarily come out the way you want it to come out. It may not pose where you want it to pose. It may not go on the perch that you pre-focused on. It is not straightforward. It narrows the odds of wandering up a riverbank with a camera in the hope that you might catch a really sharp image of that beautiful orange and turquoise creature that flashes past. But it's about the only way you're going to get a decent kingfisher shot. So judges do have this rather jaundiced view of pictures of kingfishers in particular, because once upon a time, a kingfisher shot like this one on the bulrush used to be really scored quite well. And then they had to have a fish, and that helped the scoring. And then the next level was the bird had to come out of the water having caught the fish. And now they have to be under the bloody water to catch the fish. You know, it's gone crazy. But this is the good point, and it's also one of my key point 3 of nature photography. If it's composed well, and it's got a really nice background, and it's got a light in the eye, pleased to report that judges are now appreciating a good portrait of a kingfisher. So if you get those elements right and you've got a decent picture of a kingfisher, it should do well. Sadly and annoyingly, the Dalmatian pelican now seems to be getting the comment, you see so many of these. So almost the pelican's taken over from the kingfisher. As a rule of thumb, and I don't care whether other judges agree or not, I think you should have the courage of your convictions. If it stands out as a good pelican or a good kingfisher image, it should be judged as good, rather than someone having the audacity to say, you see so many of these. Who sees so many of these? It's an irrelevant statement. But Dalmatian pelicans are beautiful birds, and they really do deserve, if they're good pictures, to be marked appropriately. Key point 4 is storytelling when it comes to nature. So the other sort of side of the judging process with nature photography is that in the judging guidelines that we're given, the storytelling value of the nature image may weigh more heavily than the pictorial quality. And that's not the technical quality, that's the pictorial quality. There's a few problems with that. Is, first of all, not all judges read the guidelines. In an open competition, it doesn't really matter that much, and judges may consider the pictorial quality is more important anyway. So my advice is to always enter the best image, and if it has storytelling value, that's a bit of a bonus, but don't necessarily put all your weight on the value of a storytelling. This is a story, couldn't get a better storytelling picture of this bald eagle stealing the fish from a sleeping grizzly bear. And I don't think I found one judge that's actually got the story. So I am a bit jaundiced. But a way to help judges get the story is to give them a title. So unless you have a nature competition that requires traditional descriptive titles, or heaven forbid, you're a Royal Photographic Society and you have to give it Latin titles, give it a title that helps the judge. So I'm just going to give you some examples. This is, I'm sure we left that fish here. It kind of helps the judge see what's going on. Oops. That kind of paints the picture, doesn't it? Give us a kiss. Whose idea was it to shelter here? And this is my favourite. It really only applies to those people old enough to remember this. Listen very carefully. I shall say this only once. Okay, so 4 key points to remember in nature competitions: composition, background, angle of view, storytelling. And the catchlights in the eye and the perches obviously go without saying if they're appropriate. So you definitely do not want to be having man-made perches like this bit of concrete. And you definitely don't want, even though it's got a catchlight in the eye, you do not want this picture with terrible background. And the other one at the bottom is with the kingfisher again. It's just terrible altogether. It's not got anything going for it, bad background and no light. So you need to really just need a bit of patience and a bit of luck. And for the getting down to a good level, I'm afraid you also need good knees, or at least you need a good tripod to pull yourself up on. I find tripods work very well for that. So when you put all the key bits together, composition, tick, background, tick, catchlights, tick, perches, tick, angle, storytelling, and then a good title. Are you going to share? All those things, generally speaking, will give you a reasonably good picture. And finally, I think it's just worth noting that in some specific nature competitions, there can be stringent rules that prevent and prohibit certain things, like prohibiting the removal of distractions or certain processing techniques. So always check the rules. Fortunately, Keswick Photographic Society competitions are open and they allow all the editing and all the fun titles you may want to use. Okay, let's look at monochrome. Monochrome is quite important in the photography world for one reason, amongst other things, is that quite often there are specific black and white or monochrome competitions. Even in the PAGB championships, which we are currently sorting out, and Jeremy is putting together our entry, there is a monochrome section, and we actually have to produce a minimum, I think it's 5 images that we put in to our opening entry have got to be in monochrome. So thinking monochrome and looking at monochrome is quite important, but not all color images turned into black and white make good pictures. They need to have elements. They need a strong composition, obviously. They need a good range of tones from black right through to white. And most importantly, they need good midtones. The graphic elements in the image that lend themselves to being presented in a monochrome fashion. So here you've got a gritty monochrome image. So this could be classified as a record shot, but by turning it into monochrome and giving it that sort of gritty grunge effect, suddenly it kind of works with the type of image that you've actually got there. And wildlife can actually work in black and white. It kind of brings a simplicity in because it takes out distracting colors. And as long as you've got a strong graphic figure in the shape of an animal or bird or whatever, it can in fact work quite well. This is high key mono, and this is low key mono. So this leopard in the shadows, really darkened down, and the only real thing you've got is a light in the eye. And this elephant coming straight at me, great shot, got down low, hung out of the vehicle, risked my life for this picture. But when in fact I saw it on the screen, the blue sky, the white clouds and the grass, which was a kind of greeny yellow color, was very distracting. But when you turn it to mono, you take all those distractions away and you just focus on the subject. Going back to sport, color on mono. Quite often, said before, it works better in mono because you haven't got all that bright green as you've got in the top shot distracting you. You're really focusing on what's going on in that sort of collapsing scrum. And sometimes success of an image can be as simple as going from color to mono. So color image didn't do particularly well because the bright areas behind this is a village Nun that was taken in Vietnam. But by turning it to mono, it was considerably more successful image. Okay, Julie touched on over sharpening. I'm just going to reinforce that by using this example. This has been done for the purpose. It's not one of my standard images, but certainly the halos and the over sharpening effect can really put a judge off. In fact, if your image is slightly soft, it's sometimes better just to leave it so rather than try to use sharpening tools which really push it to its limits. When you're looking at a picture, before you decide on how sharp it should be, magnify it to 100% on your computer screen. Now, if you have, excuse me, if you have got telltale halos, Julie showed you how you can remove them with the cloning tool through a layer, then the blending mode set to darken. And if you've got the recording, you can obviously refresh that. But a far better way of sharpening is to use an inverted layer and selectively sharpen the bits that you want. So if you sharpen the whole image and then basically create a layer and remove all the sharpening so that you've inverted it, and then just with a brush sharpen the bits without going over the edges, you will avoid getting all those halos. Just really, you don't often need to sharpen a sky, so it's just really a question of applying sharpening where it's needed rather than applying it to the whole image. Try different shape crops. Sometimes we just go for the classic 4x3, but sometimes 4x3, 3x2 formats can be a bit boring, but not always work for your particular composition. So going for letterbox or even a square landscape can actually sometimes just strengthen the overall composition. And judges do like to nitpick. They have quite a few images to go through, so they sometimes just look for things so that can justify their decisions. So my advice is, where necessary, declutter your images. Take away the things that judges may think are unnecessary. Like, the backside of another bird encroaching into the image that you want to present. Trees that go out of the picture. Judges just get really quite uptight about things going out of the picture where they don't need to. So, something as simple as that is very easily corrected. And they don't like bits being chopped off. One judge didn't like the fact that I cut the back of this guy's head off. So, just be aware. And if you have got areas like this, just try to make sure that there is some detail in the dark area and the light area. The light area is not completely burnt out and the dark areas aren't completely blocked up. But if you've got color and you've got white, you want to make sure the whites are white. You do not want the gray. And if the black's meant to be black, make sure they're meant to be black as well. So coming a little bit on to creative. So trying something different, being creative, will give certainly you a lot of pleasure. Sometimes it will give the judge something new to look at. They don't always get it, but I don't think that should ever put you off. I think if you are going to explore creative photography, it's a great area. It's really, your imagination is the only thing that limits you. Enjoy it. Certainly creative images now are incredibly popular. There's national and international competition salons, specific sections for it, and they can be produced in a number of ways. But first of all, I want to look at what you can do in the camera to be creative. So this is a high key still life. This is photostat. So you've got basically things sharp from front to back, and works. That is a very simple thing to do. That's using window light, diffused window light. You can either have a light box, which you can pick up pretty cheap from Amazon, or you can just use a net curtain or voile in front of your window, which gives a nice diffused light, and you can just snap away. Infrared images are pretty successful. Again, as long as you've got the right things to photograph. You need things that work well with infrared. Infrared, as you know, I'm sure, basically is very, very good for stonework, rock. It lightens green, so anything that's green, like grass or trees that have got a bright green, will go white. Blue sky will go black, so it makes the white clouds stand out. And you get a great deal of drama out of an infrared image. There are ways of producing it post-production, but they aren't particularly satisfactory. If you want to pursue infrared, then talk to Julie. Julie had a camera converted some time ago now. Basically, you get the sensor in the digital camera converted just for infrared. and you snap away, and then you can either create color pictures or you can create mono. But color is an acquired taste, whereas mono, I think, works pretty well, as you can see with these two examples. In-camera high key. So if you like the high key effect, it works quite well if you've got the right subject matter. So you've got all these beautiful grasses here. This is in the colour Harley. And if you've got the right animal that's kind of quite dark, then it works really well. So this is shot at 2 stops overexposure, and that helps to the background's very, very sort of pale and wishy-washy. But it works, I think, quite a lot. Here you've got a very graphic example of high key landscape, where it almost turns it into a pen and ink effect. So what you do, you shoot the image at 2 stops overexposure, and then in post-processing, you increase the blacks and the contrast. Again, do that in Lightroom or other software, but just bring the blacks up, bring the contrast up, and you will find you have quite an interesting and pleasing picture. Intentional camera movement. Back in the day, it used to be called a little jiggle of the camera or a drag shot, but now it's become an art form. You can use exposures from anything from 2 seconds down to about 10 for different effects, and some work, some don't. Generally, the rule of thumb with taking these sort of pictures is to take a lot, because maybe 1 out of a dozen or maybe 1 out of 100 might work, but when they do work, they're quite pleasing. You can try a combination technique here. So this is a combination of straight shot and ICM shot, and then blending them together afterwards. So you've got, you've got the Manhattan skyline with the sunset, take some straight shots, and then before you kind of move, so you're in the same position, do some ICM pictures. And then what I've done in this case is I've overlaid one over the other and then brushed in some of the sharper bits that I want. So it's not all one drag shot. It's kind of got some sharper bits, and that way you get the best of both worlds, and you can take a view how you want to play with it. Using your shutter speed to create mood and movement. So here you've got a stampede of wildebeest and zebra, 20th of a second. This was f11. But you can see it's adding more dynamism than just taking a straight picture. Here you've got, this is 30th of a second, but I was blessed because the zebra is actually standing relatively still, whilst the wildebeest are all charging because they're stupid creatures. This is part of one of the migration in the Masai Mara crossing the river. So this, I was able to get away with a 30th of a second at f8. And I call it the Sea of Wildebeest. And I think it just, again, it's just being creative in camera. So this is a creative image using animals, and really doesn't require a great deal. So this was a orangutan in Dublin Zoo holding the stem, and all I've done is replace the seed head in post-production. And that in itself is all it was needed to make it into a very successful picture. Here you've got 2 ostrich. They were not, there was 2 separate images of the ostrich, male ostrich, and they were charging around kicking up the dust, but they weren't actually fighting. So all I've done is put them into the one picture, and of course it gives now a much stronger storytelling image of the 2 ostriches chasing each other, although say they were both came from different, they were at the same time, so that's why the light is all works all very well, but they weren't in the same frame. And putting the subject in the studio, taking the picture and then giving them a suitable background to add to the storytelling value. So here you've got this guy who took in a studio at Belfast with Bob and Annie, and always thought that it kind of needed something more. He was a great character. So this background is a disused old village hall, which is also in Ireland, as a part of the Folk Museum. And I've just darkened it down, basically taken the contrast of the background down, and then cut him out and put him into it. Now, the thing you've always got to be very conscious of with putting someone taken in a studio into a different background is that the lighting is sympathetic. And you've got to make sure the shadows are where the shadows should be. But where you have a particularly dark background, and if you certainly are doing it in monochrome, it does help quite a lot, because you haven't got a great deal of shadows to work with in this case, and you've got the light straight on, and then all I've done is made the background darker and darker, which would be in keeping with the light coming from the front. I want to talk you through this shot, so just analyze it. So this is the background. This was taken in Dubrovnik. It was taken on my phone a few years back, and you can see it's a pretty ordinary background, but needs some work to make it into a usable background. And this is what I've done with it. So obviously tidied it up, taken bits out that are distracting, blurred it slightly, taken the contrast down, and then darkened it down quite a bit. This is the portrait. So this is where the key lighting is coming from. You can see there's a background light reflector, no light in the glass orb. So this was taken with traditional studio lighting, Canon R5, 24-105 at 63mm, f10, 160th ISO 100. So pretty standard settings for a portrait. And then put into this Dubrovnik scene. So it's all about getting the light right, and obviously the light source is the globe, which was achieved by, well, it's a white brush, and I think it was about 20% through a layer, and then you can adjust it through a layer. So obviously you could adjust it so you get the light as much as you want, and then clearly you work on the face and the fingertips and the beard for the light to coincide until you're happy with. The other thing I had to work on that was standing out was the hand on, as we look at it, on the right hand side, because that was quite well illuminated, as you can see there. And the fingers, as you can see, aren't all glowing. So all those things had to be done post-production. But once it's finished, it gives you a very pleasing image. Oh, and I just want to add, I guess, that most portraits really benefit from a piece of Nik software called Dark and Light Center, where you can put the center anywhere you like and then adjust the light on the face and then the background light to correspond. And if you haven't got Nik, I'm not suggesting you rush out and buy it, but unlike Photoshop, you don't rent it, you actually purchase it. But it is actually a very good piece of plug-in software, particularly if you're doing portraiture. And this is exactly the same background, but a totally different setup. Still black and white. Been a very successful picture for me. Here I have taken the light from the right-hand side. So he was taken in the studio in exactly the same way as this. But what I've done is I flipped him. So the light now was on, it was on this side, so it's now on the right side, and I've increased the lighting coming in from here. So hopefully it kind of balances up, and then darken this down more, and then put him in dead central of the arch. And there you go. You've got a pleasing portrait with a pleasing background that adds to the storytelling. So, a bit about images created in Photoshop and post-production. So creative photography is something which you can learn a lot more about. Magazines are full of it. It's just bear in mind, it's not essential to producing successful images, but don't confuse it with post-processing of raw images. So when you're doing stuff and creating backgrounds and doing all that type, that's taking photography to the next level. But in the first level, you just need to master post-processing of your raw images, and you would get some really good, impactful images. There's a place for creative photography, and I think everyone eventually dabbles a little bit. I mean, I don't go anywhere near as far as Julie does, or Joe, or some others that are really good. But I do enough to please me. But overall, if you can get it right in the camera and give yourself a minimum amount of work, then so much the better. We are photographers after all, we're not graphic designers. So there's quite a lot to be said for getting it right in the camera. Just as long as you don't forget, you've just got to do a bit of post-processing to get the most out of your raw images. Another thing I want to just point out to you is reprocessing of old images. It can make a huge difference. So here on the left, you've got a picture that I took in Belfast of this guy called Joe, and we gave him a beer bottle, and it's called My Precious. And I process it to the best of my ability in that picture on the left. And so much so that it went into my DPAGB panel and it was successful. Now the picture on the right has been reprocessed with software because it's improving constantly. And it was so successful, it was in my M panel, my master's panel. So it just goes to show that pictures that you've taken a while ago, if you have got the time and the inclination to go back and reprocess it, it's amazing what can happen with a little bit of time and with all the new tools that we have in our new toolboxes. The success sometimes can just boil down to something as simple as a bit of processing. So this picture on the left of Windermere at sunrise with all the mist has never done very well and had normal positive clarity. So I tried it with negative clarity, and lo and behold, it was quite successful. So so simple, just switch from making it a little bit more blurry to the one that gives it a little bit more contrast and so a bit more positivity. So sometimes it doesn't take much, does it? So just remember, a picture will always be successful for you if it delivers what you set out to achieve with it. But as soon as you enter into a competition, it's judged against certain judging standards and the criteria relating to the competition, if that applies, and of course, other people's work. It's then that you have to ensure as far as you can, it meets the competition standards. So I'm going to take a look now at Jeremy's request at the UK photographic distinctions, in case any of you would like to have a go, if not now, at some time in the future. We're going to start with the Photographic Alliance of Great Britain, as we all call it, the PAGB. So the PAGB now have made it quite complicated. Back in my day, there used to be a C, D, and an M. But now there's the B, C, D, E, and M. The judging is a little bit different. There are 6 judges that are experienced, and they have a maximum of 5 marks each. They score from 2 to 5. If they give it a 2, that's a fail. If they give it a 3, it's a maybe. If they give it a 4 or 5, generally speaking, it's a pass. The assessments are held twice a year around the country. And I've put down here, and I'm not going to go through them because you have this recorded and you can see it's all written down for you anyway, as to what you need for the various levels. So the very lowest level, though, is in print, and that's 7 prints. And the lowest level in print or digital is 10 images. So that's worth thinking about. I'm just going to show you how things change, what a successful CPAGB panel looks like. This is in 2011. So that's what I entered. See, I'll give you a few moments to see it. I don't think it needs much explanation, but see, there's a mixture of still life, nature, landscape, a bit of semi-street photography, I suppose. That was my C panel. This was my successful D panel. As you can see the picture of the guy with the bottle. Quite a lot more nature, I would say, because I was kind of getting more into nature. Some street pictures as well. One sporting image. I think I just started doing a bit of sport with Bob's encouragement. And finally, my M panel, which I got, it's 10 years ago now, in 2016, which you can really now see how I've changed quite a bit with a lot of nature and the rest portraiture. And once again, my picture of Joe with his bottle ends up in the M panel as well. So really, it's quite a good illustration, I guess, of my photography changed. But the point I want to make to you is that you change with it. Your skills change as you progress. Another good test of photography is the Masters of Print. So if you do start to enjoy printing and you have a picture you particularly like, then it's worth thinking about entering. They only accept 60 images a year and there are only 1 per person. So you can, I think it's 5, I think you can enter, but only 1 will be selected. So all the others may be worth it, but they will only take 1 picture per person into that 60. And it's quite a nice, satisfying thing to do. Then that exhibition goes around the country. You can go and get your reward. The badge is the bronze one you can see on the screen. You can go and get that when it is opened in Birmingham, when they do the opening and the presentations. But it will be then all around the country. And I think last year, Gerald brought some of the prints to the club and we put them out for people to see. Again, it's a chance to see the creme de la creme of printing from British camera clubs.
Alan,
yeah.
Alan, so
yeah.
When you say they go around the country, they also go to Carlisle, the camera shop at Carlisle, Wilkinson's.
Yes, it does. It goes to Wilkinson's.
Yeah, and it's there for about 2, 3, 4 weeks.
Yes, it is. But I'm not certain, but I think it also does go on offer to camera clubs once it's done the rounds.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether Gerald's getting it this year. But it's certainly worth, if you get the chance, Jeremy's right, if you get the chance when it comes up to Carlisle to go and see it. I think it's been and gone now for this year. Okay, the next thing is the British Photography Exhibitions, or BPE for short. And this is a nice way to ease yourself in as well. This has 3 judges, again, experienced judges, and you get crowns, and you start with 1 crown, and you just need 25 acceptances. And then, as you can see, you can go 2, 3, 4, 5. There are currently 13, which isn't very much, 13 PDI and 1 print BPE competitions each year. They're run by camera clubs, local camera clubs like ours, but they do require quite a lot of work. But because they're only held once a year, there's not like all the clamour there is for internationals. It's a nice thing to do to ease yourself into photography. The standard is really good. They have really good judges, and it helps you to get feedback from how your pictures are doing at that level. If you want to go beyond 5 crowns, then you then have to start thinking about awards. So to get an associate, you not only need 5 crowns, you then need another 100 acceptances plus 20 awards. And if you want to move up to a fellowship, you then need another 100 acceptances on top of the 100 with the associateship, and then you need 30 awards. And it's the awards, take it from me, are what really, really makes it hard. The acceptances are not that difficult, because if you get a score of 12 or above, generally speaking, you will get your picture accepted, but you need 14 or 15 for an award. There's normally about 4 to 6 categories, so you can kind of pick what works for you. There's always a colour open and a mono open, and then there's nature, landscapes, sometimes there's sport, portraiture, creative. It's normally maximum of 4 pictures per category. The cost works out roughly about £1.50 an image to enter. Because most of it is digital, obviously you just upload your entry. So you can kind of dip your toe in and see. Just a few little tips. If you get an 11, that means that 2 of the judges have actually awarded it or given it a score sufficiently to say we think it should be accepted. In other words, they've given it 4, but only 1 mean bugger is given it 3, meaning that you haven't got accepted. So it's worth trying again others, because you may well find that other judges give you 3 4s and you end up getting accepted. The other thing to look out for is when they put a little star against the score of your image. Let's say you've got 13, that tells you that one of the judges gave it 5 out of 5, and that's quite good feedback to know that one of the judges considered your image to be top class, and that's kind of good feedback as well. Finally, the Royal Photographic Society. I'm not going to say a lot about the Royal Photographic Society. It's pretty straightforward. The 3 categories are the L, A, and F: licentiateship, associateship, and fellowship. The licentiateship, the bottom rung of the ladder, is 10 individual images, and here pictures are judged by 5 judges, but the judges don't give it a score. They merely say yes or no. In other words, in or out. When you move on to an A or an F, all the images have to work as a panel, and they're judged as a body of work. So you have to produce a statement of intent, a written statement, which you send in with your pictures, and it's read out, and they compare whether you've achieved what you set out in your written statement with your actual panel of work, your themed work. So it's a totally different approach to the PAGB distinctions. And one little thing I just should add, they don't really overlap. So let's say a picture that's done really well in the PAGB might not work with the Royal and vice versa. So that because they're all about, the Royal Photographic Society, all about panels, as I was saying earlier about judges, when you have competition that's a panel, the panel has got to work as a panel. And that is the key to success with the Royal Photographic Society. So let's wind it all up. What does make a good photograph? Well, for your benefit, and save you doing it, I Googled it, and there are over 200 million views as to what makes a good picture. So here are a few top photographers' views. Joe Cornish, I'm sure you've heard of, top landscape photographer. Timing, lighting, composition. Julian Mott evokes motion. Mark Timothy, energy. And Getty's emotional content is the most important. Dave Yates, impact and balance. David Ward, simplicity, beauty. It's all a lot of old bull going on there, isn't it? Really, what they're all saying, it's all words. I think what makes a good photograph boils down to one 3-letter word, which I'm sure you can work out what it is. It's wow. If you can get a wow factor in your images, then you punch the judges between the eyes, and more often than not, it will be very successful. Okay, 7 fundamental things to take away from this talk. Composition, absolute must in everything. Light, exposure, post-processing, storytelling, impact, or the wow factor, and of course, you've got to enjoy it. You can't do anything unless you enjoy it. If you get a real buzz out of whether you spend a day in the studio with a model, whether you sit in a high, freezing cold, whether you stand up to your neck in snow, whether you stand on a hillside when the pouring rain or waiting for that one shaft of sunlight, doesn't matter. As long as you have fun, then you will enjoy your photography, and that is quite important. So it's worth knowing what judges look for, but you need to take pictures for you. But don't give judges an easy time to find faults in your images. And remember, nothing wrong with taking record shots, but they won't, just as long as you realize they won't necessarily do well in competitions. So try and add your own creative angle, different lighting to that picture. Don't be put off by a judge, and certainly don't ever give up photography because of a judge's negative comments. Keep looking for that wow factor in your photography. Funnily enough, the more you try, the better you become at seeing it. And finally, be prepared to take constructive criticism and build upon it. But any negative comments, just ignore them. I thought I'd finish on a quote. I saw this quote by Fernando Pedro Salgado. Now, some of you may have heard of Salgado, some of you may not, but he is one of the world's top photographers if you Google him. I've certainly got some of his books. I know Keith Snell is a big fan of Salgado and has got quite a lot of his books. And he is amazing. But I just loved how he described a photographer's routine. Go outside, take 200 photos, like 3, edit 1, wonder why you took 200, repeat. But somewhere between the bad photos, missed moments, completely useless shots, you start seeing differently. And that's how you improve. I thought that was a very, very good statement. I hope this has helped. You have a better understanding of judges, and hopefully it's awakened your competitive streak, and of course helped you avoid rejection, but most of all, carrying on enjoying your photography. Oh, well, that's not bad. Almost 9:30. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you very much.
I've no idea how to stop sharing. How do I stop sharing, Jeremy?
So down at the bottom, there'll be a
I've got nothing.
green
There's
box.
nothing. No, I've got nothing at the bottom.
So you've got a thin little bar with a red, not at the bottom. It'll be off to one side on your screen somewhere. There'll there'll be a black and red.
Well, I normally do, but it's not here. Let me close
It's on your
this down.
on your other.
Hang on.
There you go.
But how I did that was just closing it down.
That's fine.
So anyway,
can I ask, does anybody have any questions for Alan about anything that is presented tonight? Or has it all been that straightforward that he's thoroughly explained it all and there's no questions required?
But it's so boring, you just want to go and lay down in a darkened room.
It's been very, very informative. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Very helpful. Thanks very much indeed, Alan.
Good. So, no questions?
Yes, Alan, can you hear me?
I can.
Right, good. You know that picture of New York where you had it complete an ordinary thing, and an adjusted one where I wondered how long it took you to make that picture.
5 minutes.
Oh, good.
So basically, as long as they're both the same size and you're in the same place, you basically just cut them. You know the principle of copy and paste of anything in Word or basically all you do in Photoshop is you copy one and you paste it on top of the other one and make sure that it lines up. If it's the same size, it should, and then you can then with it that creates a layer, and then you can brush in bits from the one that was taken without a blur where you want it.
Yeah.
I'll
try that.
Yeah, it's very easy. So it's always worth, if you're taking some ICM and you've got it on a tripod or you're in a position where you can, without moving, take 2 pictures. So take the straight shot and then go like that with a second shot, and then you should have more or less captured one with a blur and one with a straight, and then you should be able to play around.
That sounds interesting. Thank you.
Okay.
Awesome.
Nothing else?
No. Well, it just remains for me to say thank you, Alan.
Pleasure.
And we'll see you all next week at the Friends Meeting House in Keswick.
Yeah.
And so.
And it's the hand-in of the first competition. Were you going to say that?
Well, I was going to say, before we get to that, there are 2 speakers. There's Simon, and he could be speaking about anything from around the world, I guess. And we've got Mike Kidd. So they are our 2 speakers for the evening. As you've just said, it's the first hand-in for the first competition. It's an open competition. So Tony will have a box for prints, and you can email him your PDIs as well.
Tony Mellings, that is.
Tony Melling,
not Tony Marsh.
Yeah, or Tony Nichols. So, and I will also have a box if you've got your prints for the PAGB print competition, which Alan mentioned, and so Val, you will have, if you're coming next Wednesday, you will have yours and you'll have Joe's.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether we're both coming or one of us.
Yeah.
Good.
And Tony, you'll have some. Richard, you will, and yourself, Alan. Fred, I've got you. And anyway, I'm not going to go through them all, but so if you've not done them, you can also bring them on the 9th as well.
So will you have a box to put them in?
Yes, I will have a box.
Because Julie won't. I can bring you mine next week, but I don't think Julie will have hers done by then.
Doesn't matter. I won't have mine done by then. Mine will be done on the 12th for the 13th. But anyway, So with that, I suppose we can stop recording.